when the spirits call, they do in the most prolific of ways, and had a chance to connect with someone I consider to be part of my soul family, a cat named Alex Cline, earlier this year, and just found him to be so articulate and so. The realization for me was the fact that here it is, young cat growing up in Los Angeles, a little bit jaded by materialism, and then thrust into this incubator of Black classical music. And we went for about 4 hours, four different sessions. And it turns out he just recently connected me with his twin brother, who has really risen to fame. I don't know if that's even the right word, but he's been all over the world playing in a multitude of settings. Although I do know at my core, my guest's roots began in that incubator. And What an honor. Nels Cline, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake. It's lovely to be here.
It's an honor to have you, man. I have to ask you if you could talk a little bit about, when you guys were coming up. Would you say that there was a couple of elders in particular that maybe they didn't take you under your wing, but they helped you not just believe in yourself, but also maybe help you define what success in this life really is?
Oh, wow. Well, yes, certainly. Um, I would say that for me, probably for Alex as well, it really started with our parents, um, who embraced culture in many forms, as well as their passion for history and English, which they taught. But we were encouraged as as youngsters to be artistic because we were inclined, as I think pretty much almost everyone is when they're young. People like to make things, they like to draw, they like to make things up. You know what I mean? We have a
Yeah,
lot of
absolutely.
imagination.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of imagination at play in a young mind. And in our case, it was somewhat cultivated, I would say. Um, and so that was encouragement. In a way, it didn't, besides being an identical twin, which is itself, I guess, kind of odd, and it doesn't exactly set one up for proper socialization in the real world because we got along and did everything together. So
I don't
essentially,
blame you. You guys are two of the coolest cats around, but still, it's like you are just always in each other's business, and that's
totally.
only you guys know that. Go ahead.
And um, so we're kind of in this bubble in a way, even though like Alex was until he was in high school was very gregarious and a very colorful individual, uh, and in a way I would say probably very well liked. I would say almost popular. Um, and then in that the high school zone, he really got depressed and went through a lot of deep stuff. But the one thing that was a constant was musical and for him particularly visual art endeavors, and that was true in my case musically. Uh, I dabbled in the visual, but we both had deep appreciation for what I guess you could generally call art from a very young age, and that never abated. Um, and so as we drifted out of our obsession with rock and roll uh, in the early 70s, uh, we discovered what at the time was not called fusion, but jazz rock and progressive rock. And this became I guess, the journey, if you will, that we're still on, in a way, the aesthetics of what we were doing in high school in our band aren't really all that different from what we're doing now. The parameters were very similar and very much inspired by what we, I guess, generally call jazz, and also the jazz avant-garde, whatever that means.
Right.
In this case, it was kind of an immediate gravitation to people like John Coltrane and Miles Davis, certainly. But in Alex's case, he just went straight off into Eric Dolphy and Art Ensemble of Chicago. And we were listening to Oliver Lake and Leo Smith and also all the ECM artists. So we became aware of a lot of European, wonderful European players, as well as all the greats in the USA. And this sort of, I guess, drew us without, I guess, premeditation or without much effort. We weren't hustling any gigs or anything. This ended up bringing us in the orbit of two, I guess you could call them elders, that we ended up playing with. That was John Carter, uh,
Hmm.
who had, by the time we were familiar with him and playing with him a little bit, he had just focused on the B flat clarinet. Um, Prior to that, he'd played, really, he was kind of like Buddy Collette or somebody. He was playing everything, every woodwind instrument. Uh,
Wow. Fascinating.
no, except for, he wasn't playing bassoon or oboe, but he was playing alto. He was playing, I think he even played some tenor. He was playing uh, flute. But this clarinet of his was this next level thing. And then his musical partner, Bobby Bradford, the cornet player, uh, was the other. They were always thought of together back in those days because they
Well,
did.
no, I mean, you just led. This is so beautiful. I mean, because I was thinking last night, I'm like, here's Nels, like, you know, obviously you guys, it was that milieu of at least going back to the late 60s, Hendrix with Mitch Mitchell, a lot of the
Yep.
rock fusion, jazz fusion. And then I listened back to a couple segments of my interview with Alex, and he taught, and I'm like, I have to believe that some of the early woodshedding, so to speak, outside of your parents' house, which we will get into, was at the Little Bighorn. Can you talk about that space? Bobby's
Oh,
club.
well, I mean, we went there and hung out, but we didn't play. We just
You didn't
listened.
play there. Okay. You were a little too young for
It was
that.
like
Yeah.
Sunday jam sessions is what happened at the Little Bighorn. Um, and so we would go and like Vinnie Golia would be playing, or there was a drummer who was quite often playing besides William Jeffrey, who always played with John and
Wow.
Cody. But there was a drummer, Alex will remember his name because he has a way much better memory than I do. But his last name was like Goldsmith or something, Gold something, and he had
Sure.
played with Sun Ra Orchestra, and uh, and Bobby would just sort of oversee the whole event, and people would just, there Charles Owens would be there quite often.
Oh my God, dude,
The
man.
other thing that happened on Sundays was Rudolph's Fine Arts Center, and I'm blanking on Rudolph's last name now, and he was a bassoonist and an amazing guy, and ended up, along with John and Charles Owens, and I believe it was maybe Red Callender, they started the Wind College. Um, and so
Was it was
Rudolph,
it Rudolph Porter maybe?
yes, yes,
Yeah, no,
that's
I met him back when I was hanging with the skipper. Like that dude was an actor too. I think he was legendary.
okay. So listen, you just mentioned the skipper who I was about to get to.
Oh
So I'll
my
just
hero.
say that back then, and we're talking, 1972, 73, 74, I guess was when we were really starting to engage with this world. Um, there was a lot of jazz to be heard during the summer, especially free concerts. So uh, what now is called the John Anson Ford Theater was then called the Pilgrimage Theater, an outdoor, really lovely outdoor kind of little mini amphitheater uh, right near the Hollywood freeway. And so we go hear Henry Franklin's band, which sometimes had Ndugu Leon Chancellor on drums, or Sonship, or and then maybe Charles Owens was generally playing, maybe Oscar Bashir on trumpet,
Absolutely.
and Henry Franklin was just one of these kind of and we didn't know him well. We just really loved this guy, and I think it seemed like everyone loved Henry Franklin. He used to drive this Citroen with his Swahili name and Yimbo on the
Niembo. Oh my God.
license plate. And uh and astonishingly, I got back in touch with him a couple of years ago, and I don't really remember the circumstances, but we were brought together by somebody in an email world. So I haven't seen him in a long time, but he's still going. And so Henry was really important. And Harold Land would play
Oh
at
my God. Jeez.
pilgrimage
This is
with his
insane.
quintet. Yeah, so we were going and checking out that world. Kirk Lightsey was in Los Angeles then on piano. He moved to New York in this later in the 70s. Um, oh man, all those guys.
Well, no, I mean, this is so beautiful because I just before we got on, I found this picture because the skipper was back when I started my show in 2011. I was obsessed with this Michael Howell album called In the Silence. It's one of the most insane
God,
albums.
I
All
forgot
right.
about this record. Yeah.
Benny Maupin's bass clarinet solo is like it's and Ndugu's on it, Kenneth Nash, but Henry's playing is just transcendent. So I get him on AM radio when I was doing my show back then in 2012, and next thing you know, I'm promoting a concert about a year later because the guy never really got a proper send off. He was a good keyboard player, but really more of a kind of a promoter for that was Gene Russell.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
all
Yeah.
right. And it was Calvin Keyes, George Harper, Carl Burnett,
Oh,
Bobby Pierce, and Henry Franklin. So I go to
that's the
Henry let
Black
me stay at his
Transit.
house, and I just sent a picture that I took from Henry's house of the concert that your dad took you to at the LA County Museum with Sonny Rollins and the Skipper and George
Yeah.
Cable. It
Yeah.
was this was mind blowing, and I just think you guys were so were your folks like they were obviously like you know very tapped into the milieu of the culture. They were bright people. They were articulate. Were they very much like did they find that their way of sort of moving the civil rights or the progress of our society forward outside of their day gigs was to help promote the geniuses of the black culture as well because you guys hosted Oliver Lake and Hemphill and all
Yeah.
these legendary cats and I just were they somebody who is that the way they sort of channeled their feelings towards our progress.
I don't I think that Alex and I dragged them into awareness of that milieu, but
Mhm.
they're just open to just all kinds of cultural activity. I think they were not necessarily intrigued by the avant-garde music so much, because my my dad especially, but both my parents really, really loved musicals, and plays. And so stage productions and the living theater, if you will, was really their thing. And they were charter subscribers to the Mark Taper Forum, which is still there and had very forward-leaning drama. Uh, and they would, if they had seen something that they thought was particularly notable or that they thought we would like, they would go back with us and they'd see it a second time, and then we would
Hmm.
see things like The Dream on Monkey Mountain, or The Adventures of the Black Girl and Her Search for God, uh,
Oh, whoa.
or uh, or Lie of the Mind later, the Sam Shepard play with Holly Hunter, um, and then also musicals. And so we didn't go to the movies quite as much as a lot of people, particularly, I guess, in big cities. We went to more plays and musicals. And so we saw Fiddler on the Roof and Man of La Mancha and Funny Girl and West Side Story and all that stuff. And then we would go to the circus with my parents. They loved the circus. So it was really about this kind of general cultural participation, I think. And also, I think it's worth noting, and I don't think this is all that unique for their generation. They already had artistic abilities, but they just didn't have artistic aspirations because their passion was teaching. And so, uh, and they'd both come from, very poor background circumstances, and really had kind of, in our case of my dad, he had been born in downtown Los Angeles and then grew up mainly in San Pedro, Los Angeles harbor town, which was a very tough town. Um, and his younger brothers, he was the oldest. One was a Navy lifer, my Uncle Ray, and Uncle Sidney was a merchant marine. And it was just a whole other world that my dad, I think, just deigned to escape from as soon as he could. And he was the goody two shoes. He was the guy who wanted to be well dressed at all times. He, I believe, probably from being sent to the movie theater every Saturday, so his mom wouldn't have him underfoot, and he would probably watch the same movie over and over again. And I have this suspicion, since I never asked him, that he would see people like Cary Grant or William Powell or whomever and want to emulate them, their style, to want to have nice things, and look good in a suit or whatever, which was not where he came from. That was not the scene in San Pedro. And our mom came from not even a town in South Dakota, a farm, which we saw, I guess, a residue of when we went across the country as a family in 1967. And there was not even a town. It was just, and my mom hated the farm. There was no electricity. She was terrified of tornadoes. And so she came to California, she and her brother Winston, very young. They left the farm, and both ended up teaching and in administration as well. My uncle Winston ended up being the superintendent of the Pomona City Schools, and was quite a character, actually. Um, but I guess my point is that, just about their artistic abilities. For
Sure.
example, if anybody for school needed uh, some kind of clever poem as part of some, like holiday entertainment production that the school was doing, and they taught junior high school, both of them. Uh, Needed a poem, my dad would write a poem. My mom would write a poem. We wanted to have, on Sundays we'd get up, and the first thing Alex and I would do is want to read the comics, the funnies. And
Right.
and I remember asking, there was this Western in the Los Angeles Times, Western comic called Rick O'Shea. And there was this, black hatted, fast gun uh, character named Hipshot. And he looked really unique, really square jaw with this long mustache and the black sort of hat that actually some hippies started wearing. And uh, and so I could say to my dad, "Hey, can you draw a hip shot for me?" And he would draw a freehand hip shot. He could.
Wow.
My parents were both like this, and
Wow.
and my dad loved drama and had taught drama at some point. And I know in my heart that he really would love to have been a stage actor. Um, and he was really kind of well known in his school for his appearances in various holiday productions or something because he was kind of a ham once he got going. Um, and he was really open to that, really free with it.
Right.
And then my parents uh, befriended this teacher in my mom's school named Larry Condon, who just passed away late last year, um, and who was incredibly important to our family and to me. I wanted to be him when I was like 6 or 7 or whatever, but because he became kind of a cultural wheel in Manhattan in the New York scene, they would go to Broadway shows all together, whichever ones were considered good, go to plays. And this is how New York came in to our lives. And in my case, and my dad loved New York, especially, and I do. So I mean, I inherited this kind of weird New York worshipful feeling that I've carried around for most of my life from my parents because of this man Larry Condon. And this is how Alex and I ended up going to New York City in 1976 on a jazz pilgrimage, um, and staying with Larry and going to hear Herbie Hancock retrospective and the John Coltrane tribute with McCoy Tyner's band and uh, Elvin Jones band, and then going to all the clubs. We just go to the Vanguard. Who was at the Vanguard? Dave Liebman and Lookout Farm.
Oh my God, gee, Vidal Roy.
Who was playing at Boomers? There was Boomers.
I
The
loved
hard
it.
bop, the
Clifford
hard bop.
Jordan. Yeah, right. Oh my
There
God.
was John Stubblefield, Eddie Henderson, Kirk Lightsey, who,
Lightsey, my hero. God, I love the man.
so, these guys were, I think maybe it was Michael Carvin on drums. I can't, Alex would remember. But those guys were always at Boomers in the West Village. And we went to, the loft scene was happening. So we went to Environ. This guy, John Fisher, I think is his name, had a loft called Environ. And David Murray had just moved to New York with Stanley Crouch around this time. And so David and Oliver Lake played duo. We went to that. That's how we inadvertently met Tim Byrne without knowing it because he was handing out flyers for a Julius Hemphill gig that we were going to have to miss. And and he remembered us because when he handed us the flyers, there was these two blonde guys, and my brother had really long hair then. We apparently went, oh man, we're gonna miss Julius. We had this huge reaction, and he just thought, whoa, those guys aren't from around here. And then
Yeah, no,
later,
dude, your brother was like a prophet. He was unbelievable at that time.
yeah, so later, Tim put it all together when Alex was playing with Julius, and they were rehearsing in his loft. And he said, wait a minute, this is one of the guys that I gave that flyer to outside of whatever venue. It might have been Environ, because he was kind of Julius' acolyte at that point, Tim was. But anyway, I
Did
sort of
you, did you, I just, this is so amazing. I mean, that was remarkable. I mean, it's fair to say that you made the pilgrimage. I mean, I'm going back to my interview with Schofield, and he was talking about
Hmm.
Studio Rivby, sort of the loft scene. You guys weren't hip to the New York loft scene in '76, were you?
That's what we were doing. Yeah, that's what we
But I
were
mean,
turning
you were,
into.
I mean, so Sam Rivers and that, the
Oh
sort of,
yes,
yeah.
Studio Ruby and Ollie's Alley were on vacation when we were there. They had taken,
Right.
so we couldn't go there. We wanted to. If the Wildflowers series had come out at this point,
Absolutely.
and and I was working in a record store by 76, I think is when I started working at Rhino Records. And, we were just buying records since we were 12 years old, 11 years old. We just get our allowance, and every 2 weeks we had enough money to buy a record. And so we'd ride our bikes to maybe Do Re Mi Music on Pico Boulevard or to Odyssey, Music Odyssey, where they were really cheap, but quite often defective, and and buy something. And that was rock and roll at that point. This is the reason I play guitar
Hmm.
is, well, the interest started with listening to the Byrds, but I became, I guess I would have to say electrified, galvanized when the first time I heard the Jimi Hendrix experience. So it's really because of Jimi Hendrix that I decided to play guitar for life.
Talking to Nels Cline here on the Jake Feinberg Show. You know, you use this, you were very articulate about, and I just wanted you to free associate on it, you know, because your dad and your mom, they were both pretty, pretty heavy artists, even though they paid the bills as teachers. And you said that they didn't necessarily have artistic aspirations. And that word aspiration, I kind of wanted you to talk about your aspiration, you know, especially coming up, even around that mid 70s period, because I know talking to Alex, you know, the New York scene, I mean, it was, I mean, it was still pretty, it was still pretty flourishing. I remember talking to Ed Cherry, the guitar player, even in that 76, 77, 78 period. A lot of people were writing original music. There was a lot of fusing of different genres. This was kind of before, you know, Gloria Gaynor and disco took over and things like that. But Alex ultimately was like, I'd rather, you know, this is you know, I don't want to be a starving genius. I want to go back to Cali, and and not that he short circuited his career by any means, but he took his own path. And I just wanted you to talk about, like, aspirationally, this was like, I mean, to pursue a career in music is a very heady thing. And I just wanted you to talk about when you kind of recognized that this was not just one of the only things you knew how to do, it was the only thing that was feeding your soul, and that you were going to become a professional musician.
I would have to say that it was pretty early for me. Uh, I would also have to stress that I was never really trained as a guitarist, and as such, have carried around a certain degree of insecurity, uh, but not enough to uh, make me think I should quit.
That's right. Didn't deter you, yeah.
So by the time we were in high school, and we had our band, which was playing instrumental music with our friend Lee Kaplan, who, by way of us, I guess, became as obsessed with improvised music and such as we were, and then ultimately started a concert series at the Century City Playhouse in West Los Angeles because he was concerned and perturbed by the fact that a lot of these artists that we were interested in they weren't coming to Los Angeles. It was not lucrative for them, or they just thought of it as a plastic town that wouldn't like their music or whatever. They would play at the Keystone Corner in San Francisco, but they wouldn't play in Los Angeles. So he started a concert series, and knowing nothing about business, and he was a terrible businessman, actually, even though he's had a successful art bookstore now for decades in California, in Los Angeles area. But he started bringing all these people. If he found out they were coming close to Los Angeles, he brought them to the Century City Playhouse that held like maybe 50 people, this little black box on Pico Boulevard. And as such, that's how we heard and met Oliver Lake and Julius Hemphill and ultimately Charlie Hayden, with whom I ended up playing for 4 years.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, he had just moved when he moved to Los Angeles to be near his ex-wife Ellen and his kids. He came into the record store. I mean, this is how I met and a lot of musicians and eventually got gigs. And you're talking about what was going on in New York, and this was also the era of all these tiny labels that artists were doing themselves, you know. So the new music distribution service existed then to kind of create a distribution network for all these tiny labels that were doing, you know, really forward-leaning, either composed music or primarily improvised music of the free jazz nature overall, I suppose. Uh, and then that's how one day, you know, at the little record store, Carla Bley just strolled in to see how things were going because she chaired the new music distribution service. So, and I was so crushed out on Carla Bley at that
Oh
time.
my God, dude. But the new music distribution, you're blowing my mind right now.
Yeah.
Because there
So,
were probably like 300 independent record labels at that time. This is before the huge contraction. And
yep.
so a lot of
Yep.
the artists, they were vested in their own labels and they were coming in to check out how things were going with the record, with the
Yeah. I
sale.
mean, it's like I make a joke about this, but I mean, you could probably have imagined that there could be like a Jerome Cooper solo snare drum album at that point. There are a lot of,
Dude, this is magical. I mean, for someone who's 47 years old, who was kind of late to the game, as far as becoming a fanatic of music, I just cannot believe you guys must have been a kids in a candy store when you got that allowance. I
oh
mean,
man,
I
it
mean,
was
just to
crazy.
go and like, I mean, I don't even know. I'm kind of speechless, man. It's amazing.
Well, let me tell you that this guy Lee, could be a very, very kind of a bit of a difficult individual in some ways back then.
Right.
Uh, but he was like, he played bass. He was interested in what we now call modular synthesizers. But he really became the guy, besides bringing these artists to his concert series that was underwritten by the record store, by Rhino Records, uh, in a way. He was also the jazz buyer at Rhino uh, back then
Oh,
in the late 70s. So he basically just figured out how to get everything. We're talking uh, like he had every Gunter Hampel record in the
oh
bins.
my God, though, that dude is out of his mind, dude.
He had
I cannot
FMP
believe
stuff.
this, dude.
So all the European and British stuff, he tried to get all of that. This was back also, there was Rick Ballard Imports in the Bay Area. And so we had ECM records that we used to have to drive across over the hill into the valley to Moby Disc to buy. He was the one that bought things periodically in Westwood Village at Vogue in the import bin. He'd see something that just looked quote unquote interesting or weird
Right,
and
right.
buy it and then play it for us over the phone. So I remember the two things that stand out of that nature were the first Jan Garbarek quartet record, Afric Pepperbird, and
Absolutely.
the guitarist Terry Reapdal does all this scrapey noise. I think he might have been playing with a bow or something. But Lee called and said, "Listen to this," and so he would play it over the phone. I said, "Oh my God, I got to go get this record tomorrow." And so we'd borrow a car and try to go. That was the first ECM record I ever bought. But the other one he got on sale that he just thought the cover and the title were so good was Topography of the Lungs on Incus, which is maybe the first or second Incus release, and from England with Derek Bailey, Evan Parker, and Han Benning. And then he played that over the phone, and it didn't even sound like music. It sounded like a cat fight or something. And I just thought, oh, we're coming over. We're
We
gonna
got to get that. Wait. What
listen to
about
this.
the cat I wanted to ask you about? Because he blew my mind open. I mean, what was so amazing is this guy. The guy really, you couldn't have asked for a better jazz buyer. But all that stuff on MPS. I mean, did you get hip to Volker Krieger at all?
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh my, he was ripping sitar solos. Like, I mean, that dude, those cats, Wolfgang Downer. I mean, that music was
I
so,
was about to say Wolfgang Downer.
yeah, no, I mean, it's insane, man. Like, I mean, and I guess that was, I, this was something I wanted you to riff on because even in as we move into modern times, I mean, you are still out there, you're touring, you're able to sing for your supper. I can just say for my generation and younger, it has become, especially in instrumental music. I mean, I have to say that in Tucson, the farm system here is ridiculous. There are cats. It's not about facility or chops. They have that, but it's more about concepts. These guys are really intense. They're very sort of Nels and Alex Kleinish. There's a lot of cats around here like that. It's very encouraging. But inevitably, if there's a big show at the Century Room, which is a great club here, and I encourage you, maybe we can get you down here. It's a great jazz club, and
Oh,
I don't care who's coming in, but it always has to be so and so doing the music, doing compositions of Keith Jarrett, or doing the compositions of Cannonball Adderley and Nancy Wilson.
oh,
The idea of original creation and in order to actually and monetize that or sing for your supper. And I wanted, even though these guys were trumpet players, you can relate it to in that early 70s period. I wanted you to talk about how inspiring it was that Woody Shaw, Freddie Hubbard, Miles Davis, those guys were still making new music. They were not playing the American songbook. They were sick and tired of bebop. It was like,
right.
for someone like you guys, can you just talk, because that doesn't exist today. You make amazing original music, and maybe you can sell it at a merch table somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to imagine that and this now you're really like, yeah, so many places I can go with this, but
Go wherever you want, man.
there was a time, well, you mentioned Freddie Hubbard, for example, who was very, very ubiquitous in Los Angeles playing live. He had just signed his big Columbia Records deal. He was really well distributed. He was doing these records like Super Blue and which were kind of like hard bop records. This was after his CTI success,
Sure.
and and working in the record store, I can tell you that uh, it wasn't just instrumental music like Grover Washington Jr., Mr. Magic, or Roy Ayers' Ubiquity or whatever that was selling. Is instrumental music was a lot of people were buying records of instrumental music at this time, at least at this little underground record store that I worked at, and uh, as such, I got it in my head and that we were going to sometimes really large venues to hear, say, Weather Report or the Mahavishnu Orchestra or Billy Cobham's band, with John Schofield that just replaced John Abercrombie in that band. And
Oh my.
Sco and I have talked about this a little bit, but anyway, he's just such a lovely individual and one of my absolute favorite musicians of all time. But anyway,
Oh,
um,
absolutely, man.
but I thought like, wow, this is great. I mean, if you're going to a place the size of the Wilshire Ebell Theater, sort of East Hollywood on the way to downtown Los Angeles, and hearing Oregon play in a venue that large, or Royce Hall, Keith Jarrett Quartet played Royce Hall, incredible gig. So I'm thinking like, yeah, I can do this. I want to do this, and because that music was happening, flourishing, and like you're saying, it wasn't uh, looking backwards at the so-called American songbook so much. And this is also a reason, perhaps, besides, uh, I guess, my age and that era, though, I wasn't thinking that I needed to play standards, but I thought it was necessary to learn all that stuff. And it was, I don't know, but have this habit of Western dichotomous thought. So I thought, oh, well, I can't play acoustic guitar and electric guitar that's intense and standards like Joe Pass and Herb Ellis on guitar or whomever, Top Tal Farlow,
I
And
dig, yeah, I
I thought
dig.
I should. So it was always kind of like a guilt thing, or like that I didn't really pounce on playing standards. I really was interested in, and Alex as well, in writing and playing our own music because that's what was happening. That's what you're talking about. And that was what we were doing in high school. And in fact, we were doing it in elementary school because we had a sort of a band that played at our elementary school graduation that played three original songs, and I didn't know how to play at all. But I wanted to look cool, so there I had my electric guitar and my scarf and my paisley shirt, and so
Oh man.
our band Homogenized Goo played uh, all original material So it's kind of what we always did, and honestly, if I wanted to draw a line in the sand at some sort of demarcation as to when that zeitgeist started blowing in a different direction, it all went to shit with Ronald Reagan. He
Hardcore. Joe Sample said it went from 300 independent record labels to six, and then that's also when uh and the NPR station in Maine would be playing something completely different than the one in San Diego, and then pretty soon we became fully interconnected, and it slowly over time. To me, I kind of wanted you to talk about if there's still. I mean, you have a, you know, outside of like, um, how do I want to say this? I mean, you have a name. I mean, I hate the word brand, but that's just what we're living in. So, like, is there room for instrumental original music in this country anymore to actually, or maybe if the better question is, will there be a renaissance? I mean, I remember Gene Perla telling me like, he's like him and Liebman were having a talk, and he's like, that just a lot of stuff has already been done. There's just a lot that's already been done, and maybe it's about taking different kinds of instruments that in different certain genres that wouldn't normally be there, changing up the presentation of instrumental music where it's not so predictable about who gets solos when. And I see with your music with Vinny, and it's very unpredictable. And I just, but I don't even, part of me just so wants to be back at a time when, like, I just feel like you guys were the luckiest cats in the world, and I just wonder, in your travels,
Mm.
uh, how much propensity or room there is for people to actually be able to take in and appreciate and pay for original instrumental music on the bandstand.
Yeah, gosh. Jake.
I mean,
Uh,
what do you do? How many you play originals on you play off of? I mean, how do you do it?
okay, well, I play in a prominent rock and roll band called Wilco. So
Sure,
that was completely, I didn't see that coming in my so-called trajectory, but um, I've been playing with my trio. Except I did, God, all the music I did with Alex, and then afterwards with my trio, the Nels Cline trio, and then the Nels Cline singers, and this and that. But I was always working in a day job. I was working in record and bookstores and record
right,
distributors. So until maybe 1998, I think was the last time I had so it was about almost 18 years of working at a cool job. So that enabled me to have little responsibility and also be able to get away for some little gig somewhere or a micro tour, like
sure,
go out with Vinny for a couple of weeks or a week. Um, but as to the sort of, I guess you'd say the business financial side of it, it's pretty brutal, Jake, because um, I'm doing it kind of in between all the Wilco work, and I got reinvested in playing what I guess we can generally call rock music uh, in the late 70s, and it was this band Television,
sure,
Patti Smith Group, and then ultimately the Minutemen that really, really blew my mind and got me more invested in the local scene in Los Angeles, which I guess you could call punk rock. Um, so I really never in the early days aspired to be versatile, but I ended up being kind of versatile. So, I mean, I know I was playing nylon string and 12 string and steel string acoustic guitar with Eric Von Essen and later with quartet music. We did that with Jeff Gautier and Alex. We did that
wow,
We did that
wow,
for 11 years. We put out four or five records. And uh and I had my electric thing, but I never didn't know what to do with electric guitar for a long time. So I was kind of I don't know what you say, like groping around in the dark, like wondering what my voice on the electric guitar is. Well, ultimately, I don't even know if I have one. I just try different things and adapt to whatever situation I'm in and try to play with, passion and commitment, if you will. But to get to the business part, I can only tell you from my perspective, and I know other people are able to do this. I don't know how, but I was supposed to play. I have a couple of bands these days. One of them is the Singers, which is now ideally a six-piece uh,
Hmm.
with people on two coasts, and that wasn't exactly a business savvy decision on my part. So we rarely ever play. But so that's with Scott Amendola, who's always been with the Singers,
Unreal drummer. Yeah.
21, 22 years now.
Wow.
And used to, and then now it's with Trevor Dunn on bass, Ciro
Oh.
Baptista on percussion, Skerrick on tenor saxophone, and Brian Marcello on keyboards. And it's much more of a electric, uh, I don't even, it's, I guess you'd call it a jazz fusion band, modeled more on those early days of the early 70s in some ways, and also
Horace.
so-called indie rock influence that I've developed a passion for and then tried to work into my own music after becoming obsessed with the band Sonic Youth and um, how they use their how I mean they made their musical decisions and sounds and things like that. But so my other band that I'm doing more regularly now when I can is the Concentric Quartet with Tom Rainey on drums, Ingrid Laubrock on saxophones, and Chris Lightcap on bass. And so these are all my Brooklyn friends. And it's worth noting two things that I'm getting to. One is that when I was living in the city, which I'm not anymore, uh, I could go here and participate in music making all the time of the stripe that you're yearning to hear, that you are describing. And quite often we're
Let me just clarify before you, because I mean it's all over the place here, but it's late at night and it's great, and the guys are getting no money. Go ahead, continue.
but check this out, Jake.
Yeah.
You could go here, you know, well, Tim Burns has started playing in his local bar on Thursdays
Oh,
sometimes.
wow.
And he'll just play for, hey, you can Venmo me or pass the hat. And that's what I played a ton of gigs and heard a ton of gigs where basically it's just pass the hat. And you're hearing some of the greatest musicians on the planet play very uncompromising music. And uh and small places in Brooklyn and there's a couple left in Manhattan. Uh, and you can't make a living doing that. So everyone goes to Europe and plays to make money, or even Japan if they're lucky. Um, and the second thing I was going to mention is that I was supposed to play little tiny tours in October and November with the Concentric Quartet. And uh, my beloved manager, Liz Penta, and my booking agents, High Road Touring, who also book Wilco and a whole lot of so-called indie rock acts. Some of them are very big, and some of them are small, like me. Um, we couldn't get enough uh, high enough guarantees to deal with the overhead of flying, renting a vehicle. In the United States, you have to get hotels that's not provided by the promoters. And I just want to pay my people what they deserve. And
Absolutely.
so the plug got pulled on both October and November. We are going to go play in Tokyo in February at the Blue Note there. But even that fee, because Japan's in bad economic shape uh, at this point, that fee is way lower than it used to be for me or for some of the artists I know, because I know they're not probably doing as well and it's very expensive to go to the Blue Note in Tokyo. Um, but
But I
he's
mean, they're gonna give you a place to stay and feed. I mean, at
Well,
least
yes, exactly,
right.
exactly. So that's the thing about the United States of America that makes it so hard for people who play the kind of music we're talking about. And I know that Tom and Ingrid, Tom Rainey and Ingrid Laubrock, they'll go do their duo thing, or Tim will go out with a trio, and he really they just want to play in the United States. They'll just go play, and they're not worried so much about what the guarantees are and how much they're making because it's something they just want to do, but they also keep their overhead low, um, and stay with friends. I don't know what they do, and I mean I'm fine with that, but I want them to have the best possible situation when they play with me. So hoping to get to Europe with the quartet next year, but it's just really hard, Jake. I just want to say,
Now, no, I mean, you're in it. You're in the gumbo, and I just know from my peers who are road dogging it right now. I mean, especially coming out of COVID. I mean, shorter tours. I mean, I'm not even sure. Anyway, the bottom line is that without Wilco, none of this would even be possible.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't think so. Maybe I'd become more resourceful and
Yeah,
a little bit more, you know, I guess business, like a little full head of steam business wise, which I'm terrible at that anyway. But uh,
well, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about is even though Carla Bley would come into the underground shops, I mean, and you had all this, I mean, there was a lot of musical freedom and the artists didn't have to wear eight hats. I mean, of course you're not a good salesman. Of course you're not a promoter. I mean, back in the day you had a record company wasn't, it didn't always work out. And obviously there were shysters and things, but you know, you'd send somebody on a tour and even if you lost money, you were making so much on the records, they could just use it as a tax write-off. So it
right.
was like, I mean, like now it's like on top of this idea of, and then this is the other thing that I wanted you to talk about because again, like Brian Auger told me in one of our interviews, he showed up at the bitter end or the Village Gate to see McCoy Tyner in the early '70s, and he said the place was, and again he's coming from London, he worshipped these guys, and the place is
Yeah.
empty. It's empty, and he's like Herbie. He's asking Herbie. He's like, why do uh why does America not recognize like these geniuses? And Herbie said something to the effect that the music. He said something to the effect like the music goes through some sort of filter, or just it needs to be homogenized. And there was and then David Spinoza told me at one point he overheard someone saying in the mid '70s, "Oh, this is actually good music to talk over." And he's
Oh
like,
God.
who talks over music? But again, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can pay to play, or you can play for the door, and you can sell merch to make money, but you don't get paid for the gig anymore. And I remember Charlie Pursup telling me, he's like, man, Dizzy used to show up at gigs when they were on the road, and people be like, yeah, man, you're just playing, man, you're having fun. He's like, dude, we're not playing. This is hard work. This is
Mm,
work,
mm,
and that compensation for the gig itself is what I'm talking about. My friends that are, it just doesn't exist anymore. And it's confounding to me that in the country of this much wealth, and going back to the Reagan thing, I mean, Jimmy Carter had Dizzy and Stan Getz in the White House. I mean, how hip is that?
well, I
And then
know
all
we
of a sudden we
listened
just
to
went
that.
to,
That was
yeah,
simulcast all over the
yeah.
country, that jazz festival on the White House lawn. And we listened to it. We listened to, and you know who his favorite artist of that festival was, right?
Don't tell me it was Joseph Jarman.
No, Cecil
No.
Taylor solo piano.
You see that how angular America was at that time. I mean, how ridiculous was that?
This is also, it was kind of this recipe for, uh, along with being a twin and being encouraged culturally by my parents, it's a recipe for living in a complete parallel reality.
Well,
You know,
that's you create your own. You guys were two of the only cats, with white. I hate to use. We're all one human race, but you two were. Oh, I don't know a lot of other cats. I mean, Vinny was older, and dude, that dude was such a maniac. He was blowing the saxophone outside Grand Central and painting and just in it. But from that time period, I am so inspired that both you and Alex, like, not just like consume the music and but you were like connecting with your elders, playing with them and creating your own reality and kind of just creating your own opportunities, which that's what the Jake Feinberg show is. It's just creating something out of nothing, really. And
yeah.
that's what I just wanted to ask you, like, whether it's Horace Tapscott or Julius Hemphill or Oliver or all these other amazing cats. I mean, because I really wanted you to just talk to the audience about what your concept of success is. Because, for me, in the Western model, you're just surrounded by materialism and how many how many cars do you have and how many houses, how much money you have, and that's the definition of success. And as a broadcaster, I just feel like success is individual voice and cutting above the morass of what every other person is doing in your medium and becoming unique and singular. And that is in art. That's kind of when you can recognize the person from the first note, first sound of their voice. That's kind of success for me. And I was wondering how much. Well, what's your concept of success, and then how much of that was instilled in you, maybe subconsciously, by all those elders that you had around you growing up that you tapped into.
Well, my idea of success is basically doing the music that I want to do and being able to pay my bills from doing only that, you
Right.
know. That's pretty
Right.
much it. I didn't ever think like, oh, I really want to be number one in the downbeat readers poll or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I did.
but
I did.
I did dream of possibly meeting and maybe even playing with a couple of notable musicians before I croak. And boy, oh boy, I ended up playing with a whole lot. It's
Sure.
kind of astonishing to me, especially because I do have, uh, besides the insecurities that I mentioned earlier, I do have big holes in my training and my skill set. Um, Part of that is, I think, because when Alex and I were kids, I mean, we just assumed that we were artists. And it was just,
You knew no, you had your own reality, man.
yeah. So we didn't really think that there was any way we couldn't succeed as artists because
Wow.
we
Wow.
didn't know enough about the real world. We didn't know that Alex, one of his all-time favorite artists, when he was a boy, was Vincent van Gogh. So we didn't know what a nightmare his life was when he was alive.
Right, right.
Because we couldn't imagine a world that wouldn't celebrate his work. So, you know. Then reality starts to seep in, and certainly growing up, uh, it's incumbent upon you to survive, and maybe also, uh, if you're in a relationship or something, or marriage, like which I've been in twice and still am, and you have to provide, you have to hold your end up. And I was just never especially adroit at that. To go back in time here a little bit, all the stuff that we did, Alex and I, and the stuff I did even until maybe the 90s, we put on our own shows. There wasn't anyone clamoring for quartet music to play. At one point we got a California Arts Council touring grant that Jeff Gautier uh, got for us, and which was something that existed at that time,
Yep.
hasn't existed for a really long time. But then the hardest thing was getting anybody to book us. Like we say, hey, we have a grant, we can do this. Well, where are we going to play? It was really hard. And uh, So we put on our own shows. There was a place called Miles Playhouse in Santa Monica in the park that we'd rent, and it was really nice and cheap. And we put on, after a while, we put on a lot of shows there. And then we also would play, the only legit place that we played with any regularity was, it was called Hop Sings in Marina Del Rey, and it was owned by the former owner of the Lighthouse, which was where we heard
Wow.
everybody. His name is Rudy Onderweiser. He had bought it from Howard Rumsey,
Oh my God.
and that was all ages. So we would, hop in the car and uh, go to the lighthouse whenever we could borrow a car. And it was pretty far going down to Hermosa Beach. Um, and if you went on a Tuesday night, you could, it was cheaper and it wasn't usually very crowded. So that's where we heard everybody. That's like where we heard, I mean, I multiple times heard the John Abercrombie Quartet. One night on a rainy night, I think there might have been 25 people there. But
So,
then,
did you see M1 Dishi there too?
yes, we
Oh
did.
my God.
I was told in the book about the M1 band that it claims that they never played in a jazz club, but they did because Alex and I were there. In fact, Billy Hart's bass drum was so close to us, we could
Oh,
probably have touched his bass drum. And Alex heard the Keith Jarrett quartet there. I think I was going to Occidental College then and didn't have a car, so I didn't make that. But we go here. Joe Farrell would play there quite often with like George Cables and Bob
yeah, Bob
Magnuson,
Magnuson. Oh my God, dude, this is the most.
Erskine. Um, and like who else did we hear there? So anyway, we ended up playing there. Alex played with Vinny's trio there, and I opened playing with Eric Von Essen duo. Rudy
Wow.
booked us into that because he was interested in us. And then when he opened Hop Sings, quartet music played there. Eric and I played, and it was a pretty big place. And I played there also with Charlie Hayden's Liberation Music Orchestra West Coast with Bobby and John and Oscar Bashir and Milcho Leviev and William Jeffrey and Ernie Watts. Uh, God, who all was
These
in
are all
that?
my people, man.
Yeah, um, so Rudy was really important because he kind of legitimized us in our own minds a little bit because we weren't didn't feel necessarily like little boys trying to do stuff. We were kind of now actually doing it. And there are
Right.
also
It was beyond the lemonade stand. You were in the club, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. That's where I heard Russ on. Uh,
Wow.
but I want to actually go back to high school for a minute because
Sure.
and maybe Alex talked about these guys. Did he talk about Glenn Jeffrey and Shasta Harville at all? So these,
He did not. No, I just was also going to say I want you to riff on that. And I also want you, I feel like even though you were a Hendrix fanatic, I'm curious if your, what gave you permission to sort of enter into your own portal was the David Hirschman giving you guys that copy of Africa from
oh yeah,
Coltrane. Okay.
yeah. He lent it to us. It was his dad's.
His dad's copy. Right, right.
His dad, Jack Hirschman, who's uh, a notable and kind of extreme poet. He's not alive anymore, nor is David. But
Was he
uh,
like doing like beat generation jazz poetry? Like,
no, no, he was so abstruse. And I started collecting his chapbooks, uh,
wow,
and I never even knew what the hell he was writing about. He did have a City Lights book because he moved to San Francisco. He became poet laureate one year, I
wow,
think like
wow.
early
Yeah, no,
on.
because Alex was like, because his son came along and was like, you guys listen to that noise music. This is really kind of like that,
Oh,
that
no, yeah,
Africa.
no, yeah. What he said was,
Yeah,
he said, so his dad wanted this for his birthday present. So, and it was his greatest years, volume one. So it's actually
sure.
an edited version of Africa, but it's the
Wow.
first track. And so, David told Alex, he said, well, I know you like all that instrumental Frank Zappa stuff. So I thought you might like this. And he borrowed it from his dad so that we could listen to it. And why we were listening to it in our guitarist friend Bill Watt's apartment, and he wasn't even there. I don't even remember what that's about. But anyway, we were listening
Right,
to it on our friend's stereo, and that for me was it was like a different version of when I heard manic depression the first time.
right,
Just one of the
right.
really, really aha, galvanizing, life-changing moments. And then I was crushed to discover that this man wasn't even alive at that point. This was 1971, I think, when we heard it,
Right.
70. Uh, and
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 he
yeah,
passed in what,
it set us on the
68?
path,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, but there are these two guys in our high school, and they had miraculously, I don't even know how they pulled it off, uh, figured out how to matriculate from Locke High School in Watts to University High School, our high school, all the way across town. And and they also had Glenn Jeffrey, the guitarist, had also played at lunchtime. They used to have concerts on the outdoors, which was the
Oh
only
my God.
it's the
So
only
great.
that's the only gig we ever had was like once a year. Like our band would play at lunchtime. But so Glenn was in the M. Stingy Jazz Workshop, with from Locke High School. They had this amazing big band, and that's where Patrice Rushen came out of. And so she was playing Fender Rhodes. They're all wearing
Oh
dashiki,
my
all
God,
these
dude.
afros, and and Fritz Wise played drums.
Fritz Wise is the ridiculous drummer, dude.
And so anyway,
Oh
this
my God.
this this amazing big band. And so we met some of these musicians through Glenn and his friend Shasta Harville, who played drums at the time. He eventually, I think, switched to keyboards. But these guys became two of our best friends in high school. And we would jam with them if they would, like, Glenn had a car. He was a very upstanding dude. He very, super straight edge, uh, elegant, well-dressed, soft-spoken, incredibly handsome. And Shasta was a much more like kind of flamboyant individual personality, kind of, and a drummer kind of the early like Alphonse Mouzon with McCoy Tyner style drumming.
Totally, totally.
And they were
Sick,
friends with
ridiculous wardrobes and crazy stuff.
Yeah, but so they were friends with Sonship and used to go to his place and describe being in his little back, those a lot of those places in Watts have the little backyard shack kind of mini building. And so that's where Sonship had his drum set, and they would just listen to him practice, and he would practice hours and hours a day, and every once in a while just have a handful of nuts and raisins or something, and then keep going, drinking like water and having nuts and raisins for 8 hours or something. And uh,
Dude, this
and
is
this
the
is how
greatest thing I've ever heard in my life, dude. Oh my God.
this is how we sort of realized, like, we started following the sort of careers of somebody like Patrice, who at that time that band won I think they won the Battle of the Bands and at the Hollywood Bowl, and she won Best Instrumentalist, uh, you know, and I actually ran into her a few years ago in Manhattan at this uh, kind of like a weird benefit convention thing, and Mark Rebo had put some solo and duo guitar stuff together. So Bill Frisell and Mark and Mary Halverson and I were all participating. Oh, and Blood Ulmer, we were all participating in this. And then there was Patrice just standing next to me at one point, and she was there to guest playing in some big band. And and I'd never really spoken with her. We used to run into her every once in a while at this West African restaurant we would go to eat on near on Pico near La Brea called So Adahosa, which was like the Olatunji village people,
Oh
who
my God. This is
we'd
like
eat.
ethnic folkways right here. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and so every once in a while they'd be there, and the bassist Charles Meeks, and
Oh my God.
always hanging with Patrice. Um, and So I got to tell her, she was super nice. And I just said, excuse me, I just want to say that I remember you playing with the Mstingy Jazz Workshop in my high school. And, uh, and I've completely lost touch with Glenn and Shasta. I heard that Glenn quit playing music professionally. He immediately started touring out of high school. Well, he started playing with Freddie Hubbard when Freddie was doing his disco Bundle of Joy stuff, which was
Oh
this
boy. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah.
really jive show. And Glenn did not have any interest in people who use drugs or people who shorted you on your money. And so, but then he ended up touring with the Jacksons. and with Denise Williams, and whatever his experiences were at that time were not to his liking, and he got married, got a job somewhere, kind of a corporate job, I think. Shasta started, he was working at Kmart or something and wanted to do stuff like Stevie Wonder stuff. And I don't know what happened to either one of these lovely people, but they were really important for Alex and me. And they rescued high school for us because Alex and I were pretty alienated and didn't have a large friend network in high school. So they really were an incredible blessing, and kind of ultimately kind of connected us to a lot of these younger musicians in Watts. And also, we had a childhood friend named Bruce Bidlack who recorded our music and recorded a lot of music. And Bruce started recording a lot of Horace's orchestra gigs, on the Sunday gigs, and
Wow.
recorded the first James Newton record, and I think the first David Murray record, Flowers for Albert. I think he recorded that. It was almost always remote recording. He would bring his stuff to an auditorium in the Claremont colleges where James and David were going to school at the time, and record them. And he recorded us, and it was somehow, I think, through this connection with Bruce and also Roberto Miranda, that Alex ended up playing briefly with Horace, in a trio, which I think that stuff's been released now. Like they found a live recording of that trio, and I think it's come out somehow. I don't know. That was
You,
pretty intense.
do you live upstate now? Upstate New
Yeah,
York?
yeah.
I was gonna ask you about one cat. As we wrap up set one here because we've been cooking for
Oh yeah.
70 minutes. There, my spiritual teacher, he moved from Wallkill to Virginia, but I was wondering. I noticed I just saw a photo of you playing at the Falcon, and I was wondering if you've ever crossed paths with Tisiji Munoz.
I know who you're talking about, but no.
Okay, I really want to put you guys together because he is well, I mean, he was playing with Rashid Ali and the Coltrane peeps back in the day, but he also came from a
Yeah.
Puerto Rico. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I stayed at his house. I kind of had a baptismal. I consider him a spiritual guide for me, and
Mm.
uh, I feel like you two. I mean, all I'm saying is, at the end of the day, you talk about having a little bit of guilt because maybe you didn't learn the American songbook the way you should have, or you should have learned more standards, or you should have had a more traditional way of learning the guitar and things like that. And to me, it's all about frequency, and it's all about uh, just the soul of this. I mean, Paul Schaefer was ready to give up on music when he was at the conservatory in Toronto, and he saw this Latin cat on a stoop playing acoustic guitar, and it turned out it was Tasiji. And they went into a practice room and they shedded for a minute, and then Tasiji looked at him and said, "Now forget everything we just played and just play just the one." And then they went, and he's helped Medeski a lot, and he turned down a multi-million-dollar record deal from Phil Ramone because he just wants to be a healer. And I was
Mm.
just thinking as you've been talking, and I noticed you probably bailed out of the McDonaldized New York, what it's become. Brooklyn's still cool, but I figured I'm like, you probably live upstate, and he just moved to Norfolk, but um,
Mm.
I want to be able to connect you guys because I just feel like that is a collaboration that really should happen.
Oh, well, that sounds great.
And I would love. I was wondering. I mean, do you think we could do set two next week?
It's possible. I am on tour until the end of the month and have some days off.
Or
And it
let's
can
just
even
trade.
happen when we're gigging because most of the time I'm just sitting around waiting for sound check and then waiting to play, and reading and play. I have to play guitar a lot now because my hands don't always cooperate the way they used to. So the longer I
Uh-huh.
play, the better it is. Uh, so yeah, it's definitely, be easy, I think.
Well, and it was just, I mean, we got still got to get to Steve Connolly and Ring and
Oh,
all these
Conley. It's Conley.
Conley. I mean, there's just honestly, it's with
Oh
you
my God.
guys. I mean, it's just so beautiful because it's just like this endless well of your own world, and that came from Sonship. I just, there's just so many great stories, and the fact that you lived it, and that you've come out on the other side, and like as far as I'm concerned, man, like, you know, it's about legacy and it's about inspiring other people to be themselves. And, I
All
think you
right.
brought a lot of that to people. So I'll reach out, I'll email you. We'll figure out another time. We'll do another installment.
Fantastic, Jake. Thank you.
Thank you, Now. It's great to connect with you, brother.
Okay, likewise, man, uh, uh, it's a challenge to try to remember all this stuff. I'm glad you have a little background from
Dude, I've
your
been
own
shedding on this for
investigation.
14 years, man. Like, I mean, it's all come full circle. And I don't, I just feel like you guys lived probably one of the most, I mean, everybody has their own existence, but you couldn't have asked for a better way to do it. And God bless your parents. I don't know if they're still alive or not, but they, you
No,
know, they really set the table, and it was just the idea of saying, sure. I mean, let because that's what I want to pick up on and set too is that they had their own mediums, poetry, drawing, but you guys were sound seekers. You and Alex were sound seeking artists, and that was like from the minute. Not that your dad wasn't; they weren't into music and stuff, but that to me, and you came up at the most amazing time. I mean, how could
well,
you fucking? It's amazing.
my mom had apparently been a very good singer when she was a girl. In South Dakota, she sang in, I guess, the local church and somebody entered her in some kind of singing contest, which apparently I think she won, but she hated the idea of competition and singing being married to each other. You know what I mean? She hated that combination. And I think she just gave up singing. But as far as I know, there are no musicians in our background, other than my mom having been apparently, my parents could both carry a tune and could, they would dance together and sing. Like somebody said a song title by accident in conversation, and they'd look at each other and then break out into song. And so they could both carry a tune, but
Sure,
know of any musicians in the family tree. And certainly, if one, well, for me, and we'll talk about it next time, one of the biggest
sure.
experiences before Jimi Hendrix and the Byrds for me was Ravi Shankar. And uh,
Oh my God.
when I was 10, I guess. Um, but uh, psychedelic rock,
We're
Jake.
not going to gloss over it, Nels. We got a lot to do, man. I mean, we got. I'm gonna also. I got to send you my interview with Howard Rumsey, dude.
Oh, right.
it's insane. I mean, Miles was crashing at his house. Whatever.
Yeah. But what I
This
want to say, what I say before we go is that being sound people, like you said, Alex,
Seekers, yeah, yeah.
sound seekers, it was uh, the combination of rock, psychedelia, and Indian classical music. I mean, I'm just sound all the way. That's just me. That's just Alex. It's just that time was very colorful and very innovative, So, and we didn't know. It was at the time. We just thought, wow, like listen to that. So, yeah. So it's the right kind of damage.
You're darn right, man. Go back and listen to that In the Silence, Michael Howell, dude. It is Henry Franklin is on fire. I mean, that's
Okay.
the other part of it. It was all first takes. It was all, I mean, the studio stuff. Even Patrice, the story you were telling, not too far after that, she was on Prestige making her own records.
Yep.
It's just, and those were insane records with Hadley Callman and
Yep.
freaking and Dougal. I mean, it just seemed it was. Thank God you tasted that because and keep inspiring, man. Keep those hands loose, and we'll be in touch, Nels. It's great
Okay,
to hang.
Jake.
Yeah, man.
All right. Peace. Thank you.
Peace and love. All right.